In this lesson, we're going to learn how to control the page layout, arranging our content blocks, images, and other elements. In order to see this easier, I've set up a page with just some simple blocks of text that we can use for our example. I'll open up the Section 5 folder, and I'll open up Layout Sample in the browser first just to see what we've got to work with. Now I'll also open it up in the text editor too. And here you can see we've just got some simple blocks of text with headings and paragraphs. Each block has already been grouped for us with a div tag. And they've all got IDs, block 1, block 2, and block 3. And the first thing I'd like to do is let's make it a little bit easier to see where exactly these blocks are on the page. In an earlier lesson, we saw that HTML blocks can have a background color property. Now I've already got a style tag set up here at the top. So I'll just go ahead and make a style rule for each one of our IDs. We'll use hashtag and the ID name, and I'll just set up a background color property. The first one I'll make light blue. And let me copy that whole style rule and we can make our other two from it. I'll just change to match the ID names of the other two blocks. And then we'll change the colors. The second one I can make light green. And the final one I'll just make pink. Let me save our changes so far. And we'll go back out to the browser and refresh. And now we can clearly see the outline of each one of those blocks that we're going to work with. Now the first thing I want to change about these blocks is the size. We can use the width and height properties on any block on our page. So let's try it here with the divs. I'll set up a generic div style that will work on all three. We'll just use the div tag as our selector. And I'll start by setting width. Both of these properties can be measured however you like, using a direct measurement like inches, centimeters, or pixels, or a relative measurement like percents or ems. I'll set ours to 500 pixels, so we'll use px for that. Now let me quickly save, and we'll go out and refresh our page. And you can see how the blocks all resize themselves to fit within the 500 pixel limit. Next, let's try a height. I'll go back to my style rule, and we'll just add the height property. And this time I'll set it to 200 pixels. Now let me save again. And this time when I refresh, you can see that the colored blocks are all showing us a 200 pixel height. But the contents inside the blocks look a little bit different this time. So let's take a look at each one. On the top one, you can see that the paragraph is clearly smaller, and it doesn't quite fill up the block. So we've got a little bit of space underneath here. But on the other two, it's really easy to see that we have too much text to fit into that 200 pixel limit. Also notice that the second one runs right over the third one. Now we have a property that can control this kind of function. It's called overflow. The default value for overflow is visible, which is what we see here, where everything's spilling out of the containers. We've got a few options, so let's go try them out. I'll use the overflow property. And first I'll set it to hidden. We'll save that change. And when I refresh, you can see that now the text is cut off. So even though our content is staying within the confines of the container, it's not going to be very useful to us just like this. Now another more useful value we can use here might be scroll. Let's save that, and we'll go take a look. Now you can see that each container automatically has scroll bars added to it. And they work too. So that way our users can actually access all the content that's in them. You'll notice though that the scroll bars take up a little bit of space in the container itself. And now that they've squished in this first one, we can see that the content no longer fits. Unless you've got a lot of content that you want to scroll, it's actually best not to set the height for these elements at all. So let me go back over in, and we'll take out those two. We'll take the height and the overflow, and we'll just remove them and save our document then. And you can see that by not specifying the heights now, each div will automatically resize itself to the content that's inside of it. Now the next set of properties I want to go over is mainly used to control spacing. We have two properties, and our background color will help us to see the difference between them. They're called margin and padding, and they're both used to add additional space around our elements. Just like font sizes, you can use whatever measure you like: inches, centimeters, pixels, or percentages. Now before we start to use them to control our page, I do want you to understand that most browsers already have default margins and padding set for many of the tags we use. I'll go up here into the top of our style tag, and let's just add another rule. I'll start with H1 as the tag for my selector. And what I want to do here is just set the margin to 0. When we use 0 for a value, you don't need to add any kind of measurement at all. Now, just so we can see both, I'll also add the padding property. And we'll set it to 0 as well. Now let's save our change. And back over here in the browser, you can see that our paragraphs moved a little bit when I refreshed. And that's because we got rid of the default margin settings that were on all of our headings here. You'll notice we still have some space, so I'll just make this a combo tag, and I'll add in the paragraphs as well. Let's save that. And this time when we refresh, you can see that everything packs all in tightly. Now we still have a little bit of space around the top and left sides of this, and that's because our body tag also has some default margins. So let me just add it to the beginning here. Now we've got a selector that will handle all three and get rid of the default browser margins and paddings for us. Let's save that. And now we can see it's tucked right up into the corner there. It's very common in a style sheet to see some resetting of properties like these as the first thing, so that you can get more control over the design. Well, now we're ready to add our own spacing property to the divs. Let me go back to our div style that we created before, and we'll just start with a margin. This time for our divs, I'm going to set it to 20 pixels. I'll save, and we'll go out and refresh. And you can see that we clearly now have a 20 pixel border around each one of the divs we created. You can't really see it on the right hand side, but it's there too. Notice that our divs are smart. It doesn't put a double margin in between them as we go down through the page. Next, let's try our other spacing property. And of course, that's padding. I'll go back to the same rule. We'll add in the padding property. And I'll also give it 20 pixels. Let's refresh the page. And now I hope you can see the difference between the two. When you add padding to a container, the spacing occurs inside the container itself. We've got 20 pixels on all sides, and it pushes it away from the boundary. And of course, margin is going to be outside of the container. Now for both of these properties, the settings can also be controlled on each individual side if you want. Let me go over to what we set up for padding, and I'll just change the property here, instead of padding on all sides, to padding left. If I save that change and we go back out, when I refresh, you can see that the padding on the top, right, and bottom sides has been removed, leaving us only with the padding on the left-hand side. We can add as many of these controls as we want. I'll add in a second line, and this time we'll use padding top. Again, I'll just give it 20 pixels. We'll save our change, and we'll go back out and refresh. And now you can see we have the padding on both the left hand and the top sides. This works exactly the same for margin. We have margin left, margin right, margin top, and margin bottom. And we can use any one we want. One other thing you'll see if you look at some other developers' pages is that for both of these properties, we also have a shorthand we can use. I'll go back to our document, and I'll just get rid of the second line we have here, and we'll go back to padding like we had before. With one number, it's going to give me paddings of 20 pixels on all sides. But we can also add more numbers to it. I'll put a space after the 20 pixels, And this time I'm going to type in an additional 10 pixels. With only two numbers, the way this is interpreted in the browser, the first number is used for both the top and the bottom padding, and the second number is used for the left and the right. So if I save this change, and we go out and take a look at our paragraphs, you can see that we have a smaller margin on the side, that's our 10 pixels, and that's both on the left and the right hand sides. And on the top and bottom we have a larger one, that's our original 20 that we set up before. Now interestingly enough, there are two more variations to this shorthand. If we have three numbers specified, I'll add a 30 pixels in front of that. The way those three numbers are interpreted is the first one will be the top, the second one will be the left and right sides, and the third one will be the bottom. So let's see how that works. I'll save it and refresh. And now you can see we have a larger margin on the top. That's set to 30 pixels. Also, our margins on the side is a little bit bigger because we're using 20 pixels for the left and right. And our smallest padding of only 10 pixels is down here on the bottom. Now, one final way you can use this shorthand is you can specify all four boundaries with one line. I'll add one more measurement in front. I'll put 40 pixels here. Now this gets interpreted a little bit differently. The first one is going to be the top measurement, and the rest of the measurements go clockwise around the border. So we'd have 40 pixels for the top, 30 for the right, 20 for the bottom, and 10 pixels for the left. Let's see how that looks. I'll just refresh my page. And now you can see we have the biggest padding on the top of 40 pixels. The padding on the right-hand side is the next down, and that's 30 pixels. Then we have 20 pixels of padding on the bottom and 10 pixels on the left-hand side. Well, now that we have control of the size and the spacing, let's take a look next at the placement of our blocks.